Hello there, I'm back again with more of a tier list video. I've covered just a few on my channel, so I decided to do more since you guys really liked watching these and judge me for what I think about them. For today, I'll be ranking some of the greatest weapon categories that almost everybody uses because of its insane damage output and its expenses. Super useful for literally any situations, in missions and the Mythic Storm King fight and whatnot. It is the long-awaited explosive weapons tier list. Keep in mind, this is all just my personal perspective and opinion, and the fact that all of the 24 explosive weapons in this tier list, some of them I did not cover yet, some of them I did, but off camera I actually tried all of them, so I do have a viewpoint for each of these, so please bear with me, even if I come up a little harsh when I rank some of your favorite weapons a little low. But feel free to just comment down below if you either agree or disagree with what I'll be ranking these super weapons of Save the World. Let's start with the basic ones that most beginner players go to. The bazooka, again, a base game explosive weapons. Believe it or not, I'm gonna be ranking this one up to S tier. Just straight up starting really big here. The base damage on this bazooka is insanely high, and the perk options are very simple to go through, and you can make some cool builds out of it, and you'll still have a great damage output. It can also be at any elements too, so this is an amazing budget pick for everyone that are just starting off and Save the World, so that's why I'm putting it on S tier. And there are other two explosives that has similar viewpoints as the bazooka as well. For the trash cannon right here, it has about the same perk options and all. The only difference is that it's a lot cheaper to craft. Its schematic comes up on daily alerts from time to time, so at some point you'll be able to grab it. The other explosive weapon that is about the same, but it's an event version, plus a buffed base damage, which is way more powerful, is the Santa's Little Helper. It comes around during Winterfest, usually at the last 3 weeks of the winter season in the event store, which is pretty reasonable because of how strong and effective this explosive weapon is. I already made a video about it in details, so make sure to check that one out if you are interested. Now we can move on to the explosives that shoots projectiles that bounces. Starting with the bowler, to be fair with you, putting this on A tier is a little too generous. It does damage, but you can miss a lot with so many shots on long range, unless you are using it on close combat to bounce the projectiles inside the trap tunnel or something. You can make it super strong with a certain loadout, I get that, but getting those certain type of loadouts can be expensive along the way. Some of its heroes require vouchers and stuff, but in general, it's just that tracking projectiles with such weapons like the bowler is kind of like not my cup of tea. So it's on B tier for me. I'd say the same thing with the discharger, but this thing's rockets bounces a lot more than any other, and it uses energy cells. There's another one, but a slower version of both of these explosive weapons is the shark attack. I wanted to put this on A tier just because its damage output is a little better than the others, but because of its crazy fall off projectile, it backed itself down like the rest of them. I also made a video about this too, alongside the Santa's Little Helper, so yeah, I'll link both of those videos down in the description if you are interested to give it a look in details. Well, we're still talking about bouncy projectiles that deals crazy damage. We can start ranking the grenade launchers, which I believe that they are quite better in terms of my playstyle. Just remember that these are all my personal takes. The thumper, another base game weapon like the bazooka, I'm putting this on A tier because it also has good perk options and very, very consistent damage per second, and which really appealed to me a lot with the Warcry rocket ammo loadout that I used before. I think that loadout is in the Flag Bearer Heroes video, so I'll link that too. I don't mind. So yeah, the thumper is just basically amazing. It's really that good with or without the mentioned loadout. I almost forgot about the jabberwocky, but it does almost the same thing with the thumper, but not as bouncy unless you hit the first shot. If your first cannonball with this weapon makes an impact, it breaks down into like multiple smaller cannonballs and deal more damage on the remaining surviving husks. The small problem for me on this one is that it's a little situational because most of the time the husks are already dead on the first hit, so it's more of a mist monster killer than a crowd clearer weapon. But yeah, funny enough, we're not even done with bouncy things yet. I don't think differently on that one when I say that. But we have the two event grenade launchers that are just about the same type. The Easter egg one and the snowball one. They may look the same, both of these two launchers, but the difference between the two is that the Easter egg, which I'm holding right here, has better perking options than the other, and another is like locked to water element, which is of course the snowball launcher right here. Their damage output is not the best when it comes to general use, but you can boost it out with the Warcry loadout that I mentioned earlier, and that's the only way to make these two pretty good. But if you want to use it regularly, you won't do as great damage like the rest of the explosive weapons, so I might have to put these two on C tier. The last grenade launcher to rank here is pretty much everyone's favorite, and I still use it to this day, even if the plasmatic discharger exists. It is the potshot, straight up to S tier because the base damage and the output of it is just way too good. Millions of damage in a short span amount of time, still usable in the Mythic Storm King nowadays, and for the mini bosses and missions, it held itself up really well for top 3 best explosives. I did brought up the plasmatic discharger just now, the fact that we're done looking around grenade launchers. So yeah, I think this is the most recently released rocket launcher in Save the World. I'll link the video that covered about this weapon a long time ago, so to keep things short, this weapon is a smasher killer. Ideal for big targets, as well as for the Mythic Storm King himself. It may be locked to energy, but it can have double damage to miss monsters perks, as well as double damage to slowed and snared, which is still insanely good against targets with giant hitboxes, so it easily takes the S tier spot. There was a weapon that we used to use a lot in the Mythic Storm King fight. It is a little similar to the discharger, but it's a little expensive. And as soon as the discharger got first released in the event store, the de-atomizer 9000 just got blown away, like completely dethroned. You can still use it nowadays if you don't have the plasmatic discharger. It is also flexible in the collection book, but you just gotta be hooked up with a lot of batteries if you feel like spending. Another explosive that uses energy cells like the de-atomizer 9000, but it is pretty much the best one out of literally every single explosive weapon in terms of damage. It is of course the Storm King's Wrath. Highest damage output, amazing for breaking crystals itself, and easily a mini boss killer. Perk options are no doubt easy to make a great build out of it, so the Wrath easily takes the S tier. There are a couple more launchers that uses energy cells, but for this one, I don't think a lot of people would appeal much to it because it used to be good until it got worked on a bunch. The Noble launcher. I am wildly gonna put this on D tier, mostly because it's too expensive to deal enough damage. It uses way too much cells whenever you try to charge your shots with it. I mean, yeah, it looks cool, shooting a wave of piercing beams that can go through structures and enemies, potentially good for crowd clearing, but it's just too much maintenance to be able to pull off, and again, it's too expensive. I think the next launcher is going to be the last one that uses energy cells, and it's a better one. I find the vacuum tube launcher actually very good, but for the same reason it is expensive, but it is still usable and locked to nature, meaning that it's very effective against water elementals. The chain lightning 6 perk on this launcher would definitely make this a lot better, but I'll have to put it down to B tier just because it is expensive, but still a bit better than the Noble launcher. Now that we're done with ranking all of the expensive launchers, we can move on to the ones that aren't and a little easier to use. Let's go with the cannonade. It's actually a pretty solid rocket launcher. It uses 1 rocket rather than the usual 3 for every shot. With a loadout that can boost it, the cannonade could have been great for A tier, but I consider it a B tier because it's not always the best in terms of damage unless you use a loadout for it. That's pretty much it. But for me, I use the cannonade as a utility weapon that can break a lot of obstacles and buildings because of how cheap it is. The V6 launcher is kind of the same thing. Shoots one rocket at a time, decent damage when used with a loadout. It's almost the same way with the cannonade, but the only difference is that its projectiles are not a hit scan, and you can notice that it falls off a lot more than the cannonade. The quad launcher, however, is somewhat different than these two. It is locked to fire element. It shoots 4 at a time, hence it's called a quad. It may be good against nature enemies, but the damage output on the rockets itself, including the fire pools, doesn't deal the most damage, especially against mist monsters. It may be good to use against crowd of husks if you want to make them walk on an area of effect fire pool, but it still wouldn't be the best like every other rocket launchers. So C tier is suitable for this one. There are a couple more launchers that are locked to fire element as well. The jackal launcher, by the way, it's almost like the bazooka, but it's locked to fire, and you can only have one copy after getting the 3 legendary husk survivors for the collection book. I'll most likely just put it on A tier. I'm being too nice on this one. Despite having a higher base damage than the bazooka, it's most likely because it's only available during the Fortnite seasons and limited to 1. While you can just get multiple copies of the bazooka and go ham with it, I still consider it good for nature storms. Okay, the other fire rocket launcher, however, is pretty underwhelming. The Dragon's Fury is something I kinda don't want to discuss in detail. I know some of you that are watching know what this thing can do, so let's keep it short. When you shoot this thing on husk and it hits, they turn into fireworks. The downfall on those shots is that it doesn't deal that much damage. Not even in the 160s are that great. I was merely disappointed in it, the fact that I remember spending my time testing this one out for like half an hour to just somehow make it viable back when nature mutant storm was like a thing. So I guess yeah, D tier fits best for this one. Alright, now we're down to the last 3 rocket launchers for this tier list, and honestly they're all not that bad. The Dam Buster and the Sod Buster, both of these are more than just basic rocket launchers. The Dam Buster has a crazy impact that you are 100% guaranteed to launch a smasher into the air, and the damage is not that bad. I would more likely say this Dam Buster is somewhat used as a fun weapon to play with rather than fitting into the meta, like the potshot or the wrath. It's not really on that level, but it's generally a fun weapon if you want to scatter a group of husks or fly smashers away. The Sod Buster is not the same with the Dam Buster, but the damage output of this rocket launcher is beyond insanity, especially against elementals, because it is one of the Art Deco weapon set. They are known for just having limited options of elements, which they can't be physical or energy. The 3 possible element perks also complements the 6 perks it can have. So like, let's say you want to make a crit build with this against water enemies, you can have it as nature and have it deal 44% bonus damage against water elementals with the 6 perk. The Sod Buster will really make their day a nightmare. Very good against mist monsters and groups alike. I'll put it on like, of course, on a very high A tier right here, all the way up here. The only thing that backed itself down is because it's limited to just 3 elementals. And now the last and my biased take on this rocket launcher, the Metal Marauder. I already have a video covering this rocket launcher, so if you want to know about this in details, you can watch that. But in all honesty, I am a risk taker. It does have a certain 6 perk that makes you lose a lot of health, but with that percentage of lost health, it goes to your damage as a boost, and it will deal millions of damage. It may be locked to both physical and fire, but its radius and damage output really blew me away. I'm putting it to like straight S tier right here, just because I was able to break a Mythic Storm King crystal with it. But yeah, that should be all for the explosive weapon tier list. I know for sure I treated some of them a little too harsh. If you have an opinion to share, feel free to do so. I will also link the template in the description below if you want to try ranking these out yourselves. And yeah, that should be all for this video. If you want to support me along the way, go ahead and use my creator code in the item shop. Thank you so much for watching. Take it easy, take care of yourself, and love yourself.